All right, Kellen. Well, it's been a few weeks since Sculpt. So first thing I wanted to ask you about was kind of what did you have any aftermath from meeting all of these crazy internet pirates in person? What was the big takeaway for you?
Yeah, dude. Man, it was just so fun. Honestly, like for me,
Yeah.
like the number one thing, I was just like, I got to do this more. I got to do this more. I got to get out there. I got to spend time with people. It's one of those things where like, especially, what I mean, it's like the last 2.5 years, I've basically been like head down working on the business. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to kind of be like, I'm going to commit to being okay with not doing anything but focusing on this. And like, there's a period where I think that is like important and serves you really well. But I definitely think that it's easy to like go overboard on that. And that was my number one takeaway. It's just like, go be with more people. And I even think that is like fruitful commercially for the business. But it's just like spiritually really important, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like, I think monk mode or whatever, right? Like it's very important for 0 to 1. Like when you're trying to make something happen that does not exist, you've got to like do that period where you're like holed up in the room, windows shut, whatever. But I actually do think there's like a point where if you're flipping into like scaling that thing, it actually might hurt you, right? Like, cause you got to start meeting people. You got to start like talking to customers or recruiting employees, or you just stay at this kind of, there's a ceiling as far as how far you can go with that.
100%. Yeah. I always like, one of the things I tell people is like, it's not cool to be the only one who's right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, there's this version of like, oh, I got it so figured out. Like, I don't need anyone. I don't need anything. I'm not going to share anything. And I'm just going to like hole up and I'm just going to, and it's like, it's like being super unrelatable, like isn't good, necessarily. Right. Like, especially like with outbound stuff, messaging stuff, right? It's like, you can have the person who thinks they're all, they got it figured out or whatever. But it's like, if it's not resonant, if people aren't becoming hand raisers, who cares?
Yeah. No, 100% true. It was good to meet all these people in person and, match most faces match to the names, right?
Yeah,
There's some people where you like don't even know what they look like. And then you finally meet them and it's just not what you pictured, right?
I have so many friends who are like, anonymous name, anonymous avatars. It's actually like a joke with my wife because we've done a couple cross-country road trips over the past few years. And so we've gone and just random places, visited people, like probably like 200 people at this point or something like that. Right.
That's a lot.
And shockingly, 0 times has it been like weird and awkward. Like it's never sucked. And so it's just become this joke that like you could go anywhere and there's just going to be like, you could drop a pin, you could just post up like, hey, I'm gonna be here for like, the day ahead of time that we can get like a half dozen people out. So
the random meetups are undefeated, right? As far as
well, it's like funny to like be meeting someone who you like, like especially like online friends where you might be, like you and I met in WhatsApp chats, I think first, right? And so in a WhatsApp chat, like you're a name. That's it, right? Like you're not even a
little
face.
Circle photo. Yeah.
Like, exactly. Like, yeah, totally. And so it's like for a long time, you have this, like, I'm familiar with this person's name and kind of like how they operate, what they care about a little bit. Right. And so you go through that. So then you meet them in person and it's this very weird thing where you're like very aligned philosophically, but at the same time, you're like a 0 to 1. I just think it's one of the coolest things.
Now, I mean, talking about getting together with people in person, I mean, you're in San Fran basically, right? So I think you've probably got a front row seat to kind of the San Francisco is back narrative. Yes. What's your thoughts on this whole thing? I mean, I'm sure you're, how many startup happy hours have you been going to?
Yeah, I don't go to as much as I should, honestly. I like, it's funny because so I'm in like the East Bay area, right? So I'm in Walnut Creek, which is like the suburbs inland a little bit. And it's like just far enough out that it's like it's an event to go out to the city to go show up to something, so to speak. You know what I mean? And that's actually like not my inclination. I like to be like with people and stuff, but I'm also don't really like to like compete for, I see it as like sometimes events like that, you kind of have to be like a pick me, you know what I mean? And like, that's like the opposite.
You don't want like the name tag vibe, right?
No, exactly.
Hello, my name is,
I'm Kellen. I'm, cause it's like, I don't really approach the market, like being overly self-interested in like what I'm doing and what my business, so I don't necessarily end up at tons of those, but it is funny how much you can just be at like the most random thing. And it's like, oh yeah, like so-and-so, like, oh, you just you run into a lot of people who are in like tech and whatnot. I had a friend, I was actually out at dinner with a friend yesterday who's in town from New York. He was saying like the signs stood out to him because just everything here, I guess, is like AI. And to him, he's like, you just don't see that back at home. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
No, I mean, well, everything gets adopted there faster and then it kind of trickles out to the rest of the economy,
Yeah.
All right. So I want to back up for the people that are listening that don't necessarily know who you are. I mean, how could they? But for the 5 that don't, I would love maybe like the short, origin story of Kellen, how you managed to find your way into these WhatsApp groups that we ended up meeting on. Early career, and then kind of how you started Deal Lab, and walk us through it a little bit.
Yep. So my origin, I always tell people, like, started when I was like 5 years old. I asked my dad, what's a job where you make a lot of money, right? Because I just figured, like, you work, like, if everyone works full time, what's the job where you like get the most out of that? And he's like, Kel, there's one job in the world where you choose how much you make. And like, as soon as he said that, I was just immediately infatuated. I didn't even know what it was yet, but I'm just like, what is it? Like, that's it. Yeah. And he's like, sales. My dad was like small business owner. It's super funny. It's like ironic because he's like, he's like, as a business owner, there's like all this BS in the way, so to speak. But like, as a sales guy, you can be this very like kind of pure hunter thing. There's his, mentality. So I was like, cool, that's what I'm going to do. Right. So I always knew I want to be in sales. I had like kind of like I had a very atypical, like, early years, so to speak. I was like a 4.0 student, but then my parents are kind of hippies also. And so my mom let me drop out of high school as a freshman, even though like,
take a gap year or something or what?
No, like stop going to public school, like opt out of the government schooling program.
I mean, hey, that tracks for California, right?
yeah, exactly. It was very Caltrad. And so, so I basically tested out high school. I started going to community college part-time and working full-time since I was 16 years old. And so I worked in the trades initially as I was doing like my GE stuff. I transferred to SF State at the same time as my high school class was like juniors, right? Like, so I finished like my collegiate degree at the same time my high school class did, but I had 7 years of full-time work experience during that, of which I had like done the trades. So I've been like an assistant, and then like a service technician, a lead technician, a project manager. And then I was doing sales and project management for the, like low voltage electrical, audio, video, like home theaters, stuff like that. Then I started my own business doing that. So I was kind of just like doing almost like think of like handyman for audio video stuff. Right?
Yeah,
like
just like real almost small like scale. IT, AV. Yeah.
Okay. Very similar. Yeah. Very similar. And like automation systems, like control systems for your house and stuff like that. And so I did that. Finished school, and as I finished school, I got like an SDR job, right, in tech. And it was like my dream to be like a tech sales guy. And so like I walk in day one, and I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm on Sarah's team, my manager, and like Sarah quit, right? So my manager had quit. No one else wanted to be there, right? Exactly. And so I basically like walked in, kind of knowing more than most of anyone else like on the team, anyways, having not even worked in this job yet, just because I wanted to be there. And so that began sort of like the 1.0 corporate career that was like eager but kind of patient, right? And like waiting my turn is kind of the way I think of it, where it's like, oh, I'll show up and I'll, whatever. So I did the cold calling and the, we did cybersecurity, like enterprise, like multi-channel, all that good stuff. I did that for a while. Then I was a full cycle rep at a like HR tech company. And so I like aggressively sold myself into this company that mostly hired like 40, 50-year-old like people. I was like 23 or something like that. And I was like, but I'll hustle my ass off on Outbound, right? Yeah. And I sold myself into this role because I'm like, I can do pipeline generation. My manager believed me, which was true. So I get into this role and I kind of found out that like, that's not, it's like HR tech, right? Like if someone's like, hey, do you want to send a code? It's like it's not the most elastic market, right? Like
they're not the most receptive to that sort of like, pound the pavement
we're starting like small
stuff,
businesses, right? So like I'm here in the Bay Area, we're small into small businesses. We were like the risk averse, very high cost option, right? And so it's kind of like philosophically not that well aligned to our market, and like whatever, excuses, like I did fine. But the idea is like, I was really like eager and sort of aggressively excited about, getting after it. And this company, like even their metrics were like, 8 discovery calls a month would create like 3 sort of like proposals. And then you get like
a month?
client. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So slow. And like, and it was really more like, 5, 2, and then you would get like a deal a quarter out of that and you would hit your number. And so it's like this very low velocity, very slow,
high touch relationship type. Not exactly a,
and right. And you're like,
it's not a spam the TAM and get it done.
No. And so I was like, doing my best there, so to speak. I was like, like bottom of the top third of my team type thing, right? Like there's some people that are doing better than me, but it's kind of like, and I was just like, this isn't it. This wasn't the thing I'm super excited for. COVID happened, right? And so there was kind of like a two-part changed my life thing, right? Number one is I came up with this mantra of like, do what excites me, not what makes the most sense. And so I like halved my pay to go get a head of go-to-market title before anyone used go-to-market. In this early stage company, basically being like the only go-to-market-y type hire. I was really actually chief of staff, head of go-to-market, tied to this founder doing like go-to-market stuff to this guy who's like a science guy, so to speak. And so joined this early stage company, and I kind of learned how to do like outbound without a product existing yet, right? Which is very different, right? And sort of like a lot of my like foundational skill set kind of came from that. Like, hey, there's like an idea. How do you connect an idea to an audience, and figuring out like what flexibility exists in that versus just like this idea of a product. And then two, I created a guide on like a Gumroad guide on how to become an SDR, because I had a bunch of friends that were getting fired from their jobs for like non-compliant reasons due to the time, so to speak. And I basically, over the next year, I actually made more money on this like stupid PDF that I wrote in a weekend than in my day job. Right. And so it became like the online money.
Yeah, that's like a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Right there, right?
Yeah, very much so. And so, so I basically, I went through, I stayed there for about a year. I had this guide thing come out. I then left that job. I joined Joey Gilkey's company, his old consultancy, doing fractional VP of sales. Right. And so now it's like, hey, you're going to go help teach people how to build outbound sales motions. It was kind of the first time that like my personal interests and like how hard I wanted to be working and like an opportunity all lined up, where it's like, oh yeah, like they want someone who's going to hustle their ass off. And it's not just like generic, like go-to-market coach or something like that. Is like very specific to outbound. We're going to build outbound teams, because the idea was these companies were investing in wanting, basically it was like mostly companies that were like 2 to 5 million EBITDA already that wanted to kind of get towards like 10, and we're looking to develop an additional channel. Right. And so for him, we were doing this like 6-month project. It was kind of this like all-in thing. It was very expensive. And we were going to like set up a tech stack and map your market and help you hire. And coach this person. And we're going to sit on top of it as this fractional sales leader. And so I got to do that over a little less than a year with like 20 something companies. Right. And while doing it, what I saw was very, 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 very clearly, there's this delineation between companies that have what I call like downhill pipeline environment, where it's sort of like, what's your market? What do you do? Go tell them that. And they're like, yes, yes, yes. Right. And if you think of like the really transactional cold email shops, it's like who those people tell you should aim at. And the way I think of it is like, they're less elastic to you. Like it kind of is just going to work no matter what. And that's great. Right. And so there's some percentage of these people that are just going to work pretty easily. Right. And you still got to do a lot of stuff, and there's still value, so it's not.
But there's like product market fit, right? Like essentially the market wants
it's just
thing.
Like, boom. Yeah, exactly. And then there's this slice that I call like uphill pipeline environment, where you can basically go, here's the market, here's what we do for them. You might even have 3 million revenue in exactly that, but you go say it to them from like a cold outbound perspective, complete silence, right? Not resonant at all. And in the old coaching environment, the issue that we had was that we were always very rich in ideas of what could work. Like there are a million ideas, right? Very creative, blah, blah, blah. But we were operating through these kind of junior sales reps, right? And each client had their own tech stack environment. And this is like 2000, what was this been like 22 or 21, something like that, like 22-ish, early 22. Late 21, I think. And so it's kind of like early on to the deliverability stuff. And so sort of like the old guard tech stack was starting to crumble and fail. Like the current reps were trained only on the old stuff. And then people like me and you and others who are like even a little bit, and I was like, an outsider to a lot of this stuff, but a little bit tuned in. We're starting, and I was like, Jesse Olette was like my, initial sort of entry.
He's the godfather,
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And he totally is for us. Whereas like, or for me, where it was like, he was just, I don't even know, honestly, just like a LinkedIn connection or whatever. But I basically, so what started to happen is it just became really clear to me, like we have lots of ideas. It's really hard to take an idea and execute because the reps don't really know and the tech stack's not that good. And then the founders, like our clients, are just pissed because they're spending like, think of it as like maybe they were 20 grand a month or something like that. Right. And so it's like they're seeing like large amounts of money month over month going like, hey, where's our progress? Right. And it was a little bit of like, not quite everyone pointing at everyone, but it was just like, no one had the answer. So what I realized was basically, I was like, I know what I need to do is I need to go start a business, and I'm going to resemble like a cold email business, like resemble like a very transactional done for you cold email business, right? Client Ascension, Nick Abraham, you know, all those guys like Daniel Fazio, Miles Veth, right? Like was an early influence on me as well. Like, and to me, what that represents is like, we're going to take what you have and we're going to go do it for you. Right. But then what I realized, basically, I was like, I'm going to resemble these like transactional business models, but I'm going to sell them consulting, meaning I'm going to help them solve a problem. I'm not going to just sell them like the units of do a thing for an outcome transactionally, but I'm going to help you like figure this thing out. And so, you know, and that's where I came up with like the framing of like message market fit, whereas like, oh, like there's product market fit. You have all, you know, you have 5 million revenue. I'm not going to tell you don't have product market fit. But if no one raises their hand when we talk to them, you obviously are lacking something, you know, and that's the framing we came up with it. You know,
well, it's true, right? It's like a leaky bucket. Like if you have a leaky bucket, it doesn't matter if you throw way more water into it, transactional style, right?
Yep.
50, 100,000 cold emails, 8 million phone calls. If it's not resonating, you're going to have to do that much more and just replace, you know, people are going to be in and out really fast. So
and it's a tough model. And I knew like there's all of these like, you know, like professional company, you know, like lead gen businesses have like a terrible reputation, right? And people think of it as like, oh, those lead gen, those cold email, you know, spam, whatever. And I knew that that's like it's like a positioning thing, right? It's like, it's not that, you know, it's like Nick Abraham could help every single one of these people. You know what I mean? And if you were to like explain exactly his business model, a lot of people would have something to say or whatever. And it's like, and so I knew that like there's this version of like people need a lot of this stuff, but they don't necessarily resonate with the idea of wanting it. And there are things that people resonate with wanting. And if you're not trying to sell, like I'm not pushing people to a landing page, I'm just trying to get them to come talk to someone. I mean, so if you want to just get them to go talk to you, like I can actually mostly focus on the thing that you want to talk about and let the sales conversation be like the delta between, you know, message market fit, so to speak, and product market fit is the way I think of it. Right. So obviously in an ideal world, you can be like, hey, this is what we are. And people hear it, they resonate with it, raise their hand and buy it. But a lot of times it's a lot more nuanced than that. Right. And there's a lot of things that you can't actually buy that way. And if you were to go out and look in the world and you're to say like, imagine you're trying to get something really important and custom, like, you know, you start to layer all these things and you're like, wait, yeah, of course this shouldn't be like a guaranteed outcome. Of course this shouldn't be the lowest cost on the market as the input. You know, of course this shouldn't be like complete risk owned by the vendor and stuff like that. Right. It's, you know, you go buy a race car to go race in like a NASCAR race. You might get last place. You're still buying the car.
Right. 100%. I think obviously there's some Hormozy-esque criticism there, which I agree with, you know, and I think that it obviously he's done really well, but he's done really well in very specific segments, you know, and a lot of consumer focused sales, which is very different than B2B in many ways. And, you know, there's kind of the truism, right? That like once marketers get a hold of something, they ruin it as fast as possible, basically. So things that worked, if everyone starts to do them, suddenly don't work.
Well, one of my lenses with the Hormozy stuff too, and cold email in general, all of this stuff is the way I see it is there's some things that are check boxes, right? Like deliverability, right? Like I use your inboxes. Lots of people use your inboxes. So saying I use your inboxes isn't like alpha that I can sell on, right? Because like there's probably, and so for me, what I tell customers is like, there's a bunch of check boxes and some people think all you need to do, you check those check boxes and you're going to get every result you want. And if that's the case, you can get the cheap people, you know, there's the risk reversal, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of people, they could get that and it's not going to get them anything. And those people are going to be like, oh, I would actually pay a premium to get something else. Right. And the people that think they might need to look for not just someone on average checking the boxes, but more than that, and I'll usually say something like those people tend to be more like the people that become our customers. They'll pay more. They're less focused on what sorts of guarantees. And usually someone goes like, oh, well, why, you know, and then you can like get into it. And so for me, I just think Hormozy. So my lens is basically you can compete on offer, right? Like Hormozy basically teaches you how to compete like on offer or pricing model. There's some different things. And I don't think, you know, basic, like I've read all this stuff. I've spent a lot of money, you know, so it's like, I'm not at all bad mouthing, but I do think there's this world of like, if you're just actually better than most people at something, you don't have to fucking risk reverse. you don't have to win on the cost side. You can just be like, you know, again, hey, if you're just looking for someone really good at doing this, you know, I think we're better than a lot of people at it. We charge modest amount more than probably the average. And if that's like super disagreeable, you just sound like not our customer.
Right.
And I think that's where like Hormozy doesn't get, you know, I mean, yeah, it's cool. You know, I mean, different. There's this company called Singer, right? Who does these resto mods of Porsches.
I've seen them and they're insane.
Yeah. They're like $1.5 million or whatever. That's like the analogy I always use. Cause it's like with Singer, you sign up to buy one of their cars. They strip it down to a chassis, a blank chassis. They fly you into LA and everything is customizable to the material, to the color, to the design, just like every single thing. And it's like, those people don't have to, you know, it's like, if you think of like the experience that those people are selling and like, you know, it's not the fastest car, right? It's not the highest horsepower. It's not winning the most races. It's none of those things, but why do people still spend this? Right. And it's like, because it is its own thing.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it makes me think, I forget who said this, but it's like, you know, you need to be really good at sales because you haven't figured out marketing. And then it's like, you need to be really good at marketing because you haven't figured out product, you know, and like Elon famously won't hire salespeople, you know, because he's basically like, look, if the product's good enough, everything else happens. And if it's not, then you have other problems basically. Right.
Right.
And I think there's some of that's true. Now, like a lot of that Hormozy type training is basically, hey, how can we take what we've got, assume that you can't change the product and the offer that much.
Yeah.
And how can I rework it to scoop up as many sales as I can with the assumption that I can't really touch the business at its core. Right.
Yeah.
But obviously if you're able to go to that level, or if somebody's working with a company like yours, where that deep dive is kind of part of the discussion, it's not just, hey, bolt on, make the calls, here's the script, go. It's let's strip this down to the chassis, if you will.
Yep.
And rework this from first principles. That's a completely different offer. It's completely different.
Plus my lens on like the message market fit stuff too is just that, like, so to your point, like Hormozy stuff is like, here's how to optimize in the context of a fixed product, right? Yeah. And like actualize what that can be, right? Well, so when you actualize that, there's like a relative best, right? And so let's just say as you do that, you start to go, right? And everyone who's run cold email has run into these like, dang, we can get a little bit, but not quite enough to justify it, right? So my lens is part of the value of like the message market fit stuff. That's like, is you don't actually have to change the product to speak to the audience like the product is different, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying like lie per se, but like you, right? You could run emails and you could be like, hey guys, you know, Scale Mill's running this promo, like inboxes are blah, blah, blah. And then you could in your head kind of be like, if the responsiveness is really high, we're just going to actually run the promo. And if it's just really low, we'll like, you know, back out of it in some sort of way and like credit people who raise a hand or whatever. Like, but the point is sort of like, I think there's a lot of value, like basically it's using messaging as a product feedback indicator. And it's where this like loop works well in, and I think what like the cold email people can do to position a little bit more like quote unquote strategically. So it's
more like market research. You know what I mean? Like instead of selling just the outcome of a sales thing, right? And I think it's actually underutilized at this level, which is, do you want the market to tell you whether they like your approach, your thing, the way you're framing it, the offer, the message, right? It's a pretty fast way to find out and relatively low cost compared to focus groups, ads,
no, exactly.
Right?
100%.
Like, but people don't really think about it that way. But it's a super fast way to test things. It sounds like that's a lot of what you're doing, at least on a new engagement, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like especially going like 0 to 1 is the way I look at it is like clinical research, right? So if you think of clinical research, right? Like let's say cancer research, there's 100 formulations of this cancer drug. If you're the best researcher in the world, what it means is that you take each of those 100 formulations and you run really clean testing that's accurately representative to sort of actualize each of those 100 possibilities. Right. And so it's like, and if you think of it as like cancer research, you know, medical research has pretty high scrutiny, right? And there's kind of like, there's a lot of resources into it. Like there's a lot, you know, so I don't think it's perfect, right? Like it's a fallacy to say, oh, it's sciencey, so it's but it's, I'd like to believe that like the scrutiny of cancer research is higher than the scrutiny of like the average guy running some cold emails, right? And so if you look at the cold emails, what it would basically represent in like the medical research world is like you have these 100 formulations, and we just like without even testing, just like poured out 97 of them, and are just like, yeah, screw these. Like, just I really think these like 3 are gonna work, and then if they don't work, just being like, I guess we're just not gonna cure this. And that's like mostly how it actually works, right? And like people, and what happens is the people, you know, the vendor or the like the buyers, so to speak, they go and they hire one person to like throw away 97 of them, and then they'll get the result and they're like, all right, screw that guy. And then they go hire another one and they do the same thing. And then eventually they go, yeah, like this research stuff just doesn't work. And you're like, bro, you've had like 4 different people try 3 different things one time. You've had 0 of these people do, you know, all 100 one time, let alone get to iterate with some of them, you know.
Right. It's like nobody applies this to marketing or ads, but they apply this different standard where for whatever reason, right, it's got to work in the first 3 weeks or the channel doesn't work. And it's like you would not apply this logic to pretty much any other domain, but for some reason, right?
It's brutal because a lot of people go hire. It drives me crazy. The people that are like on the 3rd, you know, they're like talking to you and they're like, well, we hired one person after 30 days, you know, after 3 months, we didn't have anything. So we fired them. We got this other one. We worked with them for 90 days and they didn't get us any. And it's like, what do you think is going to happen next? You know, like, I don't know. Yeah.
At some point, it's the definition of insanity, right? You're just doing the same thing over and over. So that makes a lot of sense. I want to maybe deep dive a little bit into like what you guys do now. So obviously you've got a different approach than most, I would say, agencies. You know, if somebody signs up, if I sign up tomorrow, like what is happening?
Yeah.
Like first month, like,
so
and how are you guys going to think about it?
Yeah. So one of the things is like, I don't basically, I think a lot of people like, my focus isn't being different per se. It's just like the frame, because I think it's like the way that we think about it is the thing that is the most different. Right. Yeah. Because so the way it's like, okay, how would you run tests to see what messaging works best? Is I would just YOLO messaging and see what works best. Right.
Try a bunch of variations.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, you know, Taylor Heron does this really well. Like a lot of people do this. Right. But so it basically what we do is on the front end, you know, we basically have like an intake month and then campaign months. Right. So it's like month 1 is like setup and everything. And then every month after that is just like running campaigns. So in the intake month, it's like you're going to fill out like an intake form because we ask a bunch of questions and we don't say like what market do you work with, what personas. We like ask questions that basically disallow you from answering it. Like you're not allowed to give us like Zoom info filters as your answers. You know what I mean? Right. It's like thoughtful, like actual things. So we ask them that. It's
smart too because it's like the assumption is you're here because you don't know how to do this right. Yes. So why am I going to listen to you?
Yes, right? Exactly. Exactly. So literally, I mean, we tell them that in the sales process, like we're going to ask them how, you know, we want to capture how they think about things. We're going to do our own research. And then what we do is we present back to them like a market analysis. That's basically like our understanding based on those things. And we'll sort of like reconcile it together on a call, right? So that happens in like the first 2 weeks. Right. So we come back to you. The way that we sort of index things is like market level, segment, persona, and like angles. And so that like framework comes from like market. The way to think of it is just like, what does the average SDR think they're reaching out to? Or like, what are like the average Zoom info filters? Like you nailed it. Like, what this client would probably just say? You know, who do you sell to? Like B2B marketers in tech. Like, okay, cool. That's the market. And then segment for us is, and there's infinite ways of segmenting markets. They're not mutually exclusive. It's just any way of dividing the market that meaningfully changes how you communicate to them, right? So for you, it might be agency versus in-house. It might be sales to enterprise versus sales to SMB. It might be sends a high volume versus medium versus low, right? I mean, versus starter. But like, you know, I mean, it's like there's, you know, I mean, it's like there's these different ways of divvying things up. And the idea is we go, okay, there's the markets and then there's segments of markets. And the ethos would be that markets naturally divide themselves certain ways and they sort of have natural ways of speaking and places that they hang out, right? So it's sort of like if someone was using like Sassy Yacht Club language to a bunch of Sassy Yacht Club people, it would be hyper resonant. Everyone would be like, how the hell does this person know this? Right. And likewise, if we took what's like in group to us and let's just say like, oh, this is like the smartest people at this, and we go say it to people who have no idea, it won't hit, even if it's right. You know what I'm saying? So it's market, segment, ways that the market meaningfully divides itself. then persona, right? So I think of it, Justin Michael has a framework like CEO of the problem, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like who in this segment of this market owns this thing, right? So let's say like in deliverability, I bet your customers sometimes account executive because they're the only go-to-market hire in like an early stage company, right? And so if you were to say, hey, who do you sell to? You wouldn't go like AEs, but you would say the people who owns cold email in the, and so market segment and then persona could be different, it could be different personas in that same segment of that market. And then last we go angle, which is just like the way I think of it is like you own your pain points, but I can own my arguments against them. Right. So we index our angles because that's what an actual email will be, is like an angle to a persona in a segment of a market. And so on the front end, we're going to map out what are the markets, segments of the markets, personas.
I imagine you end up with like 50 of these basically. So you're not running out of ideas anytime soon.
No, exactly. And so then what we're running is like 5 at a time, bi-weekly cycles, right? So like 2 cycles a month with the idea being kind of like, 2 weeks before we're going to run so if the first 2 weeks is doing this market analysis, we sit down on the call, then on that call, all we need to do is agree conceptually on what are the 5 different campaign targets that we're going to run. Right. If we do that, then, within the next week, we're going to get you copy and a list. You give a thumbs up. Day 1 of month 2, it launches. And 2 weeks later, we're going to be sitting down to basically repeat that cycle, which is now we'll have half a month's worth of results. We're going to be deciding what are we going after next, prepping that to launch. And so it's just like iterating through that. And basically what happens is you either quickly find like super positive trajectory where you can kind of like immediately talk about
it's just let's keep running with this, or it's let's swap into until we get something that's
exactly.
starting to resonate.
Or you get to like, because to me it's like 3. It's like either this super works, what next? It kind of works, what next? Or it's like if it super doesn't work, then sometimes it might be like, is there other channels we should be talking about? So we have clients that we do like the form. So we will do done for you cold email. We'll do done for you hey reach campaigns. Sometimes we'll do calling. Usually calling is an add-on to one of the first 2. We have some clients that are like very much so like rev ops, where like they have reps and the reps are actually doing like executional things, and we're just kind of like routing and distributing and stuff.
You're like a go-to-market engineer, but outside.
Yeah, basically. Like that's basically, and I see it as like strategy and operations. Like I've never personally been I don't use the engineer term for what I do.
Oh yeah, right? No, I mean it's
No, I
feel like that train might have left the station at this point, though.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, for me, I just see it as like I've never been like I don't come from a technical background. I'm a creative person, right? Like I would call myself like a musician, and so for me, it's funny because it's always been like creative ways of segmenting the market and writing copy. Like I've been doing that for a long time, and then like there's some big momentum of things currently that's like good and helpful. But I kind of reject the idea that like, oh, now that it's engineering, like it's valid.
Right. You're right. Because there's a lot of creativity that goes into this, and it's far more akin to like a marketing skill set than like an engineering coding skill set.
Yeah. And it's like a chip on my shoulder. Tech, like you said, Elon doesn't want to hire the sales guys. Like all these people don't want to do that. Yeah. And I get the thinking there. Right. But my thing is, I'm super good at this like go-to-market engineering thing. And I am that sales guy. Like all I've ever aimed myself at was since I was a little kid, how do you make a bunch of money, easily? Like, it's like, I come from that.
And
now.
Not every product is going to be the iPhone where it sells itself, right? There's going to be plenty of products that need a little bit of extra help. Yeah. And there's plenty of, room for people like us to help people sell those things.
Because even there, I would even say it's like coaching in a way too. Because if you think of like the product of ideal health, right? Like what percentage of humans are going to on their own perfectly pursue ideal health, meaning like their diet, sleep, and exercise are just like on point? It's like almost none. Right? Yet most people probably like would be, I fall into this, like I'd be happier if I was like healthier or whatever. Right. And so, and who are the people, like how do people, how does LeBron James get his health better? Right. Like how do people who have infinite resource do it? It's like coaching. It's like people. And so some people, I think, and to me, again, this is like the engineer brain is like, if you create the ability for something, things will just happen. I think that a much truer sense is that the best things that could happen almost never happen on their own and almost always need a nudge. And to me, ergo, sales, marketing, vibes, like all of this type of shit And it pisses me off that they say, writing off like the sales and go-to-market influence and being like, oh no, it's product and tech. It's
it's like the AI SDR thing, which I guess I got to get your take now. I know I think the whole thing's half baked and we're very far away from these things actually being good enough to do this stuff. But I'd be curious to get your thoughts on, that's whole market.
I pretty much like, who was it? Someone in like gtmcafe.com, right? My Slack group, like someone asked about, they're like, hey, I'm in a proposal against AI SDR. Like, what do you guys say when that happens? And I was like, I literally just say, I was like, just tell them that if they think like buying an AI software product is going to get them the outcomes they want, that you're embarrassed that you're because you're in so the wrong room. And he's like, really? And I'm like, no, like sincerely, just like to me, it's just
just set a meeting for 3 months from now. That's right. I'd be like, just set a meeting for 3 months from now when it doesn't work. Because
even let's bring it like honestly, even extrapolate all the way to the furthest, right? Let's say they're great. I do not personally believe in like the single person $1 trillion company, right? Because people pretend like the AI maxi, like the idea is that you take AI all the way to the end, and what it means is like no one's gonna need to hire. It's like, are you kidding me? Imagine, bro, if you had $100 billion company, you like, I don't want to lift a single finger. It's like I immediately am going to allocate, $10 million to hiring 10 people to just doing like, so I do think the sort of like concentration of like tasks to people, that relationship will change. But
and I think like if there's any engineer title that actually I think is true, it's prompt engineer. Because frankly, that's still actually, from my perspective, the thing that I've taken away is like still the most important skill set is if you're not asking the right question to these things, they can't do anything good.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you ask great questions, they're amazing. But that's actually hard to do. And they can't ask good questions by themselves. Because I've already tried questions,
good goals too. Like
right.
I would say one of the Stoic Epictetus quotes is like, no wind is favorable to a man who knows not which port he sails. Right. So it's like, if you don't have a direction you're trying to go, there's no, whether it's tailwind or headwind, who cares? And to me, that's like, you can't prompt and say like, build me go-to-market to 10 million, right? Like that's not what it looks like. So what good go-to-market looks like is being like, I sell to marketers in marketing-led startups and then like applying a bunch of nuance, like super nuanced perspective. And then downstream of that, like the AI stuff can sort of like articulate things and like reassemble it. But I just think you need it's like perspective, someone has to have the perspective. Someone has to have the orchestration as well. Right, like these tools, it's not, again, you don't just click like go build me go to market and all of a sudden people, it's like sending messages and
create go to market campaign for this company. And it's like, unfortunately, what you end up getting is these things are really good at going to like, I guess you like in math, right? Remember like best fit line, and that's like the easiest way to like they snap to the most bland version. Yeah,
they aim at
the
averages,
blandest
literally
possible version of whatever that thing is.
Like, literally what the technology is of these models. LLMs are predictive models. What it's doing is it's interpreting the pattern of what the historical thing was, like the prompt to ask, and it's predicting the future characters that should come out, which is like based on sort of like on average, when this has been the case, what is the average of what happens next? And what is like what we do 101 pattern interrupt? And what does that interrupt say? Is like, we want to take, so it's good to understand that pattern, but it's always like that plus a little something else. Right. And I say the same, like think of music, right? It's like, why aren't the Grammys dominated by AI products? Right. Because music isn't, if you think of like beautiful music, it's not like just what are the notes, but there's like space between notes with no sound that adds to the drama of how things are felt and stuff like that. Right. And I think, again, it's like, it's why I say like this stuff is art, not math. It's not 1 + 1 = 2 at all.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think like everything that I've gotten that's like, it's an amazing tool, but you have to push it like far outside of where it would snap to get the result you want, right?
Well, it's not the big question.
Write me a marketing campaign. It's like, write me a marketing campaign with the assumption that we want to really emphasize product-led growth, XYZ. And then you have it say something, because now you've constrained it enough. It kind of has to do something interesting. You know what I mean?
Well, it's also like the way AI works is like, it'll do like, you can say do X, but you might not realize that what you actually want is like X minus Y, Z and a million other things, right? So you kind of be like, hey, ChatGPT, like bring me home. And it's like, if it catapulted me into my house at 5 million miles an hour and exploded me into a million particles, oh, like that's not what I wanted, right? And it's like, oh, you didn't say like, bring me home and don't kill me, but you might need to do that, right? And that's where, again, these companies aren't going to just like deploy like, it's a bow and arrow and you let go and it's just like whoosh. Someone's got to be assessing like what happens on the back end and iterating that. And in order to do that, you need to have command over like the skill set to begin with. You need to have nuanced understanding and articulation and all that sort of stuff that, again, it's just like, there's not going to be like this coder founder guy who's like never done like creative writing things, being able to like ChatGPT, go run me a great campaign. They're not going to be able to look at it and they won't know. You know what I mean? Like it's just going to be like, I don't know, I guess this works. And as long as they're going, I guess this, you and I are going to be able to easily beat that.
So, I mean, we're talking about AI a lot. I imagine you guys are, given that you run the Clay Cafe, power users of Clay.
Definitely. Yeah.
So how do you, if you're getting somebody up to speed on like how to use this tool, what do you kind of emphasize? What are you guys using it for? What are you not using it for? Might be even more interesting.
Yeah. No, I feel you on this. I think Josh Brown has this old, he used to do training on like superpower, not the sword. Right. And so the idea is like, what does it let us do? So to me, and like, I love Clay, so I don't want any of this to at all sound like Clay hater, but like a lot of people kind of make it where it's like Clay is the answer to things. And my lens is like, Clay is not a capability. It is a tool. And I don't think Clay lets me do anything that I couldn't do otherwise, except for it's just a different scale, right?
It makes it so much easier, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's like I can program it into a table and cascade it across a bunch of things, but it's like fundamentally, like if I'm using ClayGen, I'm like, go look at this website and tell me blah, 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 and, tag it, da. Like that's something that you could still just do on your computer, right? And so for me, when I'm thinking of the like oscillation between what's the tools that I should use and then like what is kind of the strategy or like operationally what should I be doing? For me, it's always like what's the idea and then execute like a representative sample of it. And then if you validate that idea works, then actualize it. Right. And so how that translates to Clay, right? And like what we do a lot of is a lot of times we're being hired to 0 to 1 outbound or 0 to 1 cold email or take a not very effective outbound motion and test to improve it, right? And so what we're doing is it's kind of like come up with ideas and then test them to see if they work. And then when we find winners, like embed them or scale them or whatever. So what I see people get wrong with Clay a lot is go like, Dean, who do you sell to? And then they sit there and they build this Mona Lisa, beautiful work of art or whatever of like a Clay table and like they haven't launched anything yet, right? And so let's say it takes them like and the problem is until you've launched something and had it kind of work somewhat, you don't know that any of what you're building is worth anything. Like it's not worth anything.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if it's getting in the way of you getting things done. And so for me, what I like to do is like quick, like almost like I might even use the word presumptively, like segment the market, right? Like let's say that with Clay, I knew let's just say like earlier I was saying like who they sell to. Like let's say I'm going to run a campaign for you. And so I'm going to go, I want to tag whether someone sells to Google users, Outlook users, or a mix, right? So like you go to the, the fresh Clay grad person and they're like, oh my God, like take their domain and ping it and find a valid email address and run it through Lead Magic and see who the IP host is and then categorize them into, Google, Outlook, or other, whatever, right? And it's like, and you can do that. And honestly, like, that's not that hard. So it's not that tough of an example, but let's just pretend that that's like really hard. Let's just say that's going to take 10 hours. On the flip side, you could literally just take your list, split it into thirds and just like guess and then run like words. And you might be wrong on some, but you're going to be right on some. And if you're right on at least some sample of them, if you were to get 0 yeses, then it doesn't matter whether or not you had the enrichments right or not necessarily. Now, this is like, again, a little imperfect because like you could be so egregiously off, like you get marked as spam. And so you're just like not delivering. But like on the flip side, as an example, let's say that you run this and it works and you're like, oh my God, I didn't actually do this. I just assumed this was true. And then some people said yes. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to run all of the enrichments to find out this as much as possible, because I know that when they check this box, I have this like especially performant campaign for them. Or I might be like, wow, I can tell that it's really compelling for me to talk about their audience. Right now I'm talking about, their email server, but I wonder if I could also talk about like whatever else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the idea is like, to me, it's always, what is the concept? Articulate that, which it frees you up of technical, like competent, like don't worry about how you're going to do it. Just talk to me. Like, what do we wish we could do? What's some crazy idea?
Right.
Then what's like this MVP? And again, this exactly mirrors product development life cycle, right? Like if you were to go start a startup, it's like, what's your MVP?
No,
what's
it's like
your
an
idea?
agile process, right? It's like quick iteration.
100%. Yes. Yeah. So it's like, what's the MVP of the campaign? Run it. If it's semi-effective, cool. Now start to like pulling the thread and like try to actualize it. And you kind of like oscillate back and forth. Like you have these ideas, you test them. And what I tell people is like, the goal is not actually like the outcomes, but just like a repeatable input process, right? Like when you have this thing where you're just like, I know I take these types of things, I throw them through this table and it's going to do this. And we're going to get this sort of stuff through it. It's perfect. Cause then you can just,
no, that's where you want to end up. And I think a lot of people get hung up on trying to figure it all out on the first try. Right. And they're trying to perfect it all. It's like this, perfect is the enemy of the good, right? And in many cases, right, we have people that are trying to figure out, is it spam filters? Is it my copy not resonating with the audience? Is it the wrong audience? Is it the wrong message? There's so many variables. And I see a lot of people just waste so much time when, no one knows that that's the campaign that's not going to work, or that the AI spam filters decide is too spammy. And you could waste all this time, send that. Then you're mad because you wasted all this time. You think it's all your providers or what have you. And in reality, guys like you, or I know at my agency, we're just going to run 10 variations very simply and see which 2 or 3 are the outliers. And then we're going to spend some time on how do we optimize those, instead of quick grief cycle on all of my brilliant variations that I've come up with,
Yeah. To me, it's like, there are some things that do require, like, I would say it's like, sometimes you can only run the basic thing with some of these like enrichments and stuff and some like fancy stuff. But I think most of the time results are perfectly representative of their inputs. You know what I mean? Like to me, it's almost never, is it like blame? I never really think it's like the delivery. I don't think it's all of those things at all. Personally, I'm probably like the least of everyone, because to me, I've just seen that like it can be such, we've had clients where like you take last sentence, make that the first sentence, everything else the same. And all of a sudden it just bangs and you're like, this makes no sense, but apparently that's it. But I think like a lot of people, the way I articulate it to our team is like, I think the average person running campaigns, it's like if you're in a plane cockpit, they have like 6 dials. And so they just, everything comes down to one of those 6 dials. And we have like 1,000, and so it's like, it's really hard when you have 1,000 dials to be exactly certain that, oh yeah, it's definitely
that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And even the stuff where it's like, cause people will be like, oh, deliverability, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so tell me what's more likely. Is it more likely you have 0 positives, which means this sucks, and whether or not your inboxes are fine, like this sucks, never do this again? Or is it that you got nothing, somehow you got spam marked, but it's otherwise great and it's going to work really well, and it's just the spam block? Right. And, and it's like, wait, hold on, because if you're spam blocked, then like, doesn't it, like what happened? And so I just think a lot of times people are very quick to blame. And especially if you're just looking for representative samples, right? Like if you're just trying to really quick on the front end, it's like if you're delivering 50% versus 100%, 50% of, like if you got 0 meetings or 1 meeting, it doesn't matter if you're delivering 100% or 50%, because doubling 1 meeting isn't going to make your client love you. It just means that sucked. And like, okay, maybe, so yeah, I think I was talking to my team this morning on like our stand-up call. You treat things very differently. If you sign up a customer and you expect not to be able to retain them well, the way that you interact with the customer through the end of that engagement is one thing. And if you work with people and you expect to be able to actually like figure things out and make them better, it's like super different. Yeah. And I just think that alone speaks a lot to sort of like the different ways that, I don't know, people can like. No,
I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, I guess for somebody that wants to like get into outbound now, maybe walk through like what you think the must-have tech stack looks like if they really want to do this correctly. And obviously, if you have any pointers on the setup of these things. So we touched on Clay, but if you want to revisit that too.
Yeah. I mean, I do. Yeah. I would basically like, to me, what I would do, like the easy 1.0 happy path is like buy domains. I don't care where you get them from. You guys do domains now, huh? Do you guys do domains? Is that true? Yeah. Cause I didn't know that.
I guess we should do a quick scaled mail sidebar too. Because I want you to go through like your experience since you've been with us for a while now, and kind of, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you were using before too, or just kind of like the experience with doing inboxes before pre-scaled mail.
Yeah, I will tell you. So I basically, like get domains somehow. If they don't have a process, I would just do it with you guys unless you guys don't like to do it. Because I do tell people, I'm like, hey, be careful. But basically, so I would just get it all through you guys, right? I would get 50-50 mix. I don't think you need to do that really, but I think it's like a nice point of redundancy, so to speak, like even if it's just preemptive. So I would get more sending capacity than you think you need, ideally 2x or 3x. And so it's sort of like, so domains and inboxes through you guys, have plenty of send capacity. I would get smart lead and I would warm up in smart lead. I would send out a smart lead, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of people, there's very advanced sending people who have different opinions on different things. But I think for like average person, it's just like the integration, like it just works too much.
You can't go wrong, and it's very user friendly and beginner friendly, especially, which is important,
100%. Yeah. So it's like, and to me, I put a lot of stock on like Vibe. For me, I just trust infinitely. Like, honestly, it's like he's been around and he's been generous in these spaces, not even just personal stuff for us, but like, and he was for us when he didn't need to be too. Like, he made us like an official partner early on when we did not, like, not that we didn't deserve to be, but just anyways, my point is like, I think he's like established himself in the space where I just like unapologetically like trust him. Yes. So I think you guys for inbox stuff, plug it in a smart lead. I would use like Ocean.io for like company search stuff. I would dump it into, so what I do is I do like a company search in Ocean. I would use Clay, and then I would use GPT, and I would use HeyReach, and that's it. And what I would do is I would use no contact tool. And I guess you would need to use like some contact search tools. So I'd use like, and like validation, right? Like emails. But so, okay, the process I would use is your inboxes with you guys, plug them as smart leads, send them in warm up. I would build your initial list in Ocean, and I would make it like overly inclusive. Like I would be really loose with it. And I would kind of build out like your TAM, and I would download that. I would export it and I would put it into Clay. Inside of Clay, I would have a company table. It's like your
that
TAM
feeds into contact tables.
Yeah. So what I would actually do is, I would basically, so I'd have your companies, and then I would run enrichments on company level of various things that you want to know in order to like segment it. And I would mostly use just OpenAI, like GPT 4.1 mini or whatever. And I would use Clayagent. And the reason I would do that for like anyone listening who doesn't already use it is like, you can just articulate to it what you want. Right. And so instead of being worried about like, oh, this tool does this tool does this tool does this, I just be like, look at this company, look at their social media. Like, do they post to a YouTube channel? Yes or no? Right. And I watch Eric Nosowski videos to learn how to do this. I just like go watch his stuff. It's amazing, especially super OG stuff. If you were like going 0 to 1, like his 0 to 1 content was just so good. So take your companies, I would enrich them. Then what I would do is I would push them to like segment tables inside of Clay. So you have like a TAM table, and then I would push it, right? So like Outlook users, Google users as a company, right? So you have TAM lists and they have like divided company lists. And then in your company tables, I would run Clayagent to search for contacts actually. So I would just say like, here's this company, go find the person who owns X at this company. They might have titles like blah, blah, blah. I would use 4.0 mini. I would make it so the output only gives you name, title, LinkedIn URL, right? So now it's going to like identify these people, but you're not going to have their information really.
Yeah.
I would push those to a table. And then in that table, I would use Lead Magic, Prospeo, ICPs, TriKit.ai is another good one. Better Contact. Like we use all of those. We've paid for all of those, and we have had partner deals with them too, right? So like, but most, and I would get a few of them, right? Because a lot of times you have some company who has like 8 Apollo licenses or something. It's like cancel all of that and get off seat-based stuff. Because now instead of 8 people on the same tool, you can have 4 of them on 4 different tools and just like waterfall them. And I would really, and then what I would do is I would just design like the idea of what a campaign is going to be. I'd write the copy, put it in smart lead, syntax it. I would push the data to it. Now, I wouldn't even mess with AI copy at first. I would use AI and Clayagent and Clay and all of that only for segmentation. And I would divide it down because it'll be two reasons. One, forcing yourself to write something that's compelling without one-to-one personalization is good because it forces you to like filter down on things that are like still meaningfully important to people. And then it's also like, you're not going to have to worry about like phrasing stuff, you know, it's like really easy to do like AI lines and have them not
well, and it can still work, by the way. I think people think that like you have to use AI copywriting, and it's like, no, you can still just write it, you know.
I would honestly say a lot of times. So actually, okay, this is good. This is another good thing to talk about because so this is another reason the whole idea of like the GTM engineer world, something that I think they get really, 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 really wrong is the market doesn't care what goes into your campaign, right? If you think of like the surface area of influence in a cold email, it is the words of the email, right? They do not know what was in your table. They do not know what you went through to get there. And people really mess that up a lot. It's one of the most common mistakes I see in like kind of new people who don't come from messaging backgrounds is they get really focused on like the product of the campaign as in like how they built it. You know, it's kind of like, hey, that sounds cool, but like, how does it work? Right. And then if you look at what works and you look at like Will Allred, right, or anyone who talks about copy and stuff, it's like you only have so many words, you only have certain types of words, right? And so like if you only have, let's say 75 words and you're going to use 3 sentences, like it starts to be that there's only so much ways that you can articulate things. And so a lot of times AI lines, the purpose of them is basically to prove to someone that you uniquely understand them, right? And a lot of times people would say something like, I want to prove it's for them. Right. And so it's like, okay, cool. That I agree. That's an important thing. I said earlier, right? Remember how earlier I was like, and look, if anyone's hearing me now, go rewind and go look at Dean's smile when I said this, because I was looking at it, thinking about it. But when I was talking about WhatsApp in SaaS Yacht Club earlier, right? So if you scrape the whole SaaS Yacht Club, right? And I don't know how many people are in there today, but let's just say it's like 1,000. And you're going to email those people. And the subject line says SYC, you know, some
closing soon.
Yeah, exactly. SYC closing soon, or like Armageddon or something. Yeah, exactly. Like, and you could write a message. It's like first name, SaaS Yacht, like everyone's asking what's next after SaaS Yacht Club. Like, and you could write a message that's going to make me smile and that's going to be like, holy shit. And I don't care that the message didn't apply to other people. I just care that it does apply to me. And so one-to-one isn't what's important. Personalization and specificity. And guess what? If you think of this as a spectrum, where on one end, it's one message to everyone, right arm out here, left arm out here, one-to-one, every single person, like this is a spectrum. And somewhere in the middle might be like, oh, if we took everyone who has these 3 factors, and if we wrote that into the message, maybe it applies to 10,000 people, but all 10,000 of those people are like, damn, this feels hella specific because this is way more specific than every other message that they ever get about anything. Yeah. Right. And what I point to is like people love to, for cold email, talk about personalization and one-to-one and blah, blah, blah. It's like, bro, go drive through San Francisco. Those billboards aren't personalized to anyone. Right. And they don't apply to most people, but people are perfectly happy to put this message up here.
Actually, I mean, this is a good point, but you know, if you have the choice between, let's say, doing some relatively weak, you know, AI copywriting that is different for every row, right? You just say something like, hey, I don't know, tell them who their ICP is, right? For example, right? And it's kind of broad. And you're doing it to a big list to then talk about your thing for them, right? But if you take that approach versus, let's say, what you're talking about, where you've already segmented people into personas to such a degree that then when you actually individually write the email for those individual personas, even though it's the same email to the 30, 50 people, it's almost more personalized and customized than your AI slop that you sent out to the 5,000 people that you convinced yourself was more personalized because
it's also more repeatable.
Thought went into it. Yeah.
It's also more repeatable, and it's also easier to attribute, which, because like, so when someone says like, tell them their ICP and then name a problem, right? And then you send that to 10,000 people and you get like, let's just say 20 yeses. And then I were to go, what about this made them say yes? You know, they're going to be like, oh, well, I told them their ICP, right? And it's like, okay, well, it's probably, and maybe it is true that it's just like a random 20, right? But it might be like, what if you went back and you look and you're like, oh my God, wait, 18 of the 20 yeses were like people who sell to like this one specific audience. Yeah. And it might be that like, oh wait, people don't give a, you know, whatever about the AI thing, but it is that when the AI happens to hit on like, oh, you sell to dentists, everyone's like, yes, because no one can figure out how to sell to dentists, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
you know, and people rob themselves because this actually, even like the way that we do like these representative sample campaigns, right? If you start from like, I signed a new client, I'm going to reach out to 30,000 contacts in one campaign. It forces you have to speak to things in a certain general way, where if I can run 5 campaigns of 500 each, the tightness of the populations that I can aim at are just completely different.
Yeah. And you can go a lot deeper. So that makes a lot of sense. I want to, I guess on inboxes real quick, you know, would love to have you just chat a little bit about your experience and then maybe, I guess, what your prior experiences were before working with scaled mail.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to name any names, but
no. Well, I mean, I kind of can because like, so basically, you know, you guys have just been really, really easy. I mean, like, first of all, just like really easy, really awesome, you know, very, very helpful. One of the things I love most about you guys is like, I refer a lot of people to you guys relatively without like doing anything official, and you guys take really good care of them. You know what I mean? Like, I point to you guys a lot and only get good things back, you know? So that's like, obviously, like, as a guy in the space, that's like important. So when we started, actually, this is so funny. So like, you know, so we say like, I'm outing him now for this, but basically Jesse Olet used to do our inboxes. Like when I started, I had no idea how to do anything. I had no idea. I mean, like legitimately, this business would not exist if for like a year, Jesse Olet literally just let me pay him to have his internal processes like on our behalf. And he just did that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he took really good care of us, but it was a little expensive, and it was like, you know, putting strain on a friend. You know,
it's not his main gig, right? So it's like a distraction at best, right?
No. Yeah. And like he was doing that for us. Like, I mean, I literally had to like not talk about this openly because for a while I was like, you know, I don't, you know, because for a little bit he did that for a few people a little bit, and then he started kind of like pushing some people off, and we were like around for a really, really long time. So, you know, again, like Jesse Olet and Vibov, just like I could not say enough good things about. But like, so, you know, that worked fine, but it was like a pain, and it was slower. We had less control over it. And especially like it was not optimized. You know, we didn't have Outlook before you. Mm-hmm. We didn't, you know, like just with you guys, it's like a fast, agile, like, you know, it keeps up with the way we operate. You know, that's a better way of saying it. Like we operate on tight timelines and schedules and stuff. It's very important. I mean, you know, I think to me, like, okay, it's easy to order. That's important. You have tons of flexibility. That's important on the ordering side. You guys do what we need, and you guys communicate well. So, you know,
it's not rocket science, right? I mean, I tell people this all the time, you know, it's not like a Google inbox is a Google inbox, right? It's all about all the things around it that make this a product, right? I ran an agency. We built scaled mail basically because it's what I wanted, which I was like telling my internal team when it was VAs doing this stuff. I was like, I want to be able to order. I was like, I want to be able to place an order, and I want them to magically appear in my sequencer a few days later. And other than that, I don't want to know anything about what's going on. And that is basically what
that's actually another,
build, you know,
another way I can speak to it is like, I know, like, one of the things in my own business I know the least about is the inbox stuff. And it's because it's one of the most delegated pieces of the business, because you guys do so good that it's like really easy for like whoever on our team does whatever, plus whatever you guys' process is, to disappear from Kellen's life.
No, I mean, hey, you can't be an expert at everything. And, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, if you do it correctly, it just buys you a seat at the table, right? It does not like change your business, right? Anybody's telling you that they've got it cracked to hit the inbox 100% of the time is totally full of it. And, you know, what there is though, is just, there's massive downsides, right? There's time suck, cost overruns, delays, you know, wrangling people. Like that part is really what you want to solve for. And so it's just one of these things where like, you're much better off becoming a segmentation wizard, you know, learning how to prompt AI correctly or ask the right questions.
Yeah. I tell people there's no alpha in it. No, I totally agree. Like I tell people it's a checkbox. I'm like, look, like all of, you know, most of the best agencies are working with you guys anyway. So it's like, even like, I just tell customers, same thing. It's like, it's a checkbox. And if you do that, it gets you a seat. Checking that box, it does not mean it's inherently going to make your campaigns work. And some people think that like the strategy they have would be perfect. They're just missing this checkbox. If you need that, I'm like, just go hit them up directly. If you don't think that would work at face value, just pay us and we'll allocate some of that to them as we do our thing.
No, it's so true. All right. So you kind of walk through a one-on-one setup. I'd like to hear about what you think where do you think this space is going? Let's call it outbound as a service in general, but also outbound for companies. What do you think the next 12, 18 months look like? Put your prediction hat on. Where do you think all this is headed?
What's funny is I'm excited. What I'll say is this I think it's interesting. So one of the things I've seen right now, so it's like the agency thing got really hot. Mm-hmm. And then what started happening is then the companies kind of got jealous and they started hiring for in-house. Mm-hmm. And to me, what that did is there's a lot of like very inflated pay scales, and not necessarily that I think that they're unfair, but it's kind of like, I would guess that what's going to happen is there's some of these companies that hire, 200,000 OTE, 250 OTE, like GTM engineers that are hiring legitimately dudes who are like an SDR like a year ago. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that a lot of those companies aren't going to get the value that they want, because I think the in-house game, it's so much slower and like bureaucratic that it's going to be an extended thing. But I think what's going to happen is just like, a lot of this conversation was where it's like, hey, you can't just just checking the box doesn't just yield the benefit. And I think a lot of these in-house teams basically check the box on like hiring a GTM engineer, but it's kind of like if you have some kid or whatever who knows how to click the buttons, but like they're not like a strategic thinker or like whatever, I don't know exactly. And then like, if you don't know the GTM engineer skill set and you're like this leader trying to kind of like hire it, like from like a hollow perspective, I just don't think that's going to work well. And so what I actually think is going to happen is it's going to help bring better nuance. I mean, even like, Clay has like their partner thing, right? And so Clay has all these people with all these partners and they have like a theoretical hierarchy, right? But like word on the street is Clay is going to bring services back in house, right? I don't know if that's like official or not. I don't really know. I don't super care, but I do believe when I heard that, I was like, that doesn't surprise me at all, because I bet what happened is that there was a bunch of momentum on like, oh my God, and a lot of those partners that they probably talked to are actually probably fine. And just what happened is it's like, if Intercom's like, hey, Clay, we want someone to help us figure this out. And they're like, okay, great. Here's Growth Engine X. And Eric comes in and is like, so what are you guys trying to figure out? And they're like, and they don't even know how to speak to it that well, let's say. And they're like, I don't know. We want to do like, and by the way, I don't know that any of these people work together, just to be clear for like listeners, just like examples in my head, but it's feasible. But anyways, it's like, they could just be like, oh, like we want our TAM. And so Eric could like build them a TAM set. Like something I see a lot is someone goes, we want our TAM data set. These are the fields we want.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, what are you going to do with it? Like, we don't know, but we want this first. It's like, okay, but if the way you divide the TAM dictates the messaging you can do, and if we don't know the messaging yet, how the can you say, sorry, I keep swearing. I hope that's okay. But it's like, how can we say, it's like, how can we say that you can like, how can you say this is like the definitive data set you need if you don't know the messaging strategy? Like you can't. And so what can easily happen is you go and you could buy a $30,000 data set from Andreas Wernick. You could then try to deploy an outbound, find out it doesn't work. And all of a sudden you go, Clay doesn't work. And Clay starts to hear that enough times and like, okay, fine, we're just going to do this in-house. Right. And the thing that's frustrating for me is that I think some of the way that like some of those programs have been indexed is not representative of capabilities so much as sometimes other things. And like Clay's business model isn't like map the services, GTM services world.
No, but I think a lot of it too is Clay, it's an AI product. And again, AI products to me are as good as the user right now still.
Right.
And so the problem there is like for them to maximize the value, they don't need a bunch of people with Clay subscriptions. They need a bunch of people that know how to use their Clay subscription.
Yeah.
And if they don't know how to use it, then they need to make it like they need to help them use it essentially. And that's to me the big disconnect is that like I wouldn't be surprised if they bring this back in house. Yeah. The utilization would go up. You don't have people staring at a screen, no idea what they can really do with this thing.
What I also mean though is I think Clay has a bit of a like I think that the agencies are savvy with utilization. So like Clay's pricing model is not super well concurrent with like agencies helping milk the most value out of things for customers, right? And so there's some and like I don't know. I mean it's a tough little ecosystem thing, but I do just think so. Like when I look into the future, I just think like where it has been like I want a GTM engineer, I want a Clay agency. I think less and less that's going to be a thing, and more it's going to be like, wait a minute, because like what Eric does and what Taylor Heron do are like so different, right? Mm-hmm. But right now, the average consumer who hasn't bought one of these probably is like, oh yeah, like those Clay guys, like Taylor or Eric or Kellen. And it's like no, like that's like saying like those software guys. Like, oh, you have a problem in your business. You need a software. Maybe you need like, I don't know, like a payroll tool or like, I don't know, like, email SaaS or whatever. Like no one thinks that way.
So what's next for Kellen? Obviously you've got Deal Lab, you've got the cafe. which is going mainstream. If you know, you know. Any vibe coded SaaS coming our way, or what's next?
You know what's funny is this. Like I tell people, I actually joke. I'm one of the only services founders who likes running a services business. As you know, I teased you about that plenty. I was like, hey, we're just gonna do one thing.
It's true. I've definitely got the shiny object syndrome. No, but yours
is real though. I mean, a lot of people do that though. Like I see so many people who are like, basically like every time they get a new customer, they have a new lovable like, MVP. And I'm like, bro, like stop releasing your customer tools or whatever. So for me, I like the services world. Like for me, it's like, what am I good at? What do I like doing? Is I like connecting with people, learning about what they're working on, and being a strategic problem solver against that. And my business, I see it as go-to-market strategy and operations. Strategy can be like workshops and like talks and coaching and like a million different things. And then like operations is like done for you cold email, done for you, hey, reach camp, RevOps, they both exist. And I see it as like, I make my money in this kind of narrow, like the Deal Lab is like kind of my only hustle. GTM Cafe, I don't make any money on, but it's like a fun thing that I get to connect with people. And what I'm excited for, I mean, it's like, how we started is like, honestly, is getting to where the last 2.5 years of my life has been like 95% of my waking hours into like the make money via the Deal Lab. I hope that the next, I hope to get that massively contained and spend more time just like with
scaling the Deal Lab. Yeah,
exactly. And like, I mean, even just like, I love, I do a lot of calls where like, I won't take someone's money and I'll be like, I'm not going to let you pay me, but I'm going to write these emails. And they'll be like, why? I'll pay you $200 or whatever. And I'm like, look, man, I'm trying to like really, I'm trying to build like a successful business. And what that means is so different. And I'm like, and as soon as I take your money, I immediately have like so much like emotion wrapped up in it that sometimes it's just nice to like just participate in the ecosystem. And so that's kind of what the cafe is for.
The price is either 10 grand or it's free.
Basically, yeah, like seriously, 100%. Yeah. I mean, especially like when you do monthly stuff, right? Like when you're running like monthly recurring deals, of like services, it's like, man, I'm not going to make some, and if it's like a rep, I'm like, bro, I'm just going to help you. Like I was that guy.
No, I mean, we all were there, and now, now we're on the pirate ship, the giant internet pirate ship, and hey, we're always welcoming new sailors that want to jump off board. All right, Kellen, anything else you want to tell people to check out, I guess, before we wrap up?
I just think
follow him everywhere people follow him. What's your Twitter handle or X handle again?
I don't have one. No.
Oh, yeah.
No. Just go Google Kellen. You'll find me. You'll find me where you should find me if you look. No. Yeah, I think the best place is my LinkedIn or gtmcafe.com, thedeallab.com if you want to check out the business. But yeah, I for me, like anyone who has any questions or anything, like hit me up. I love connecting with people. I love answering little stuff, and you never know where it's all going to take us.
You're one of the most helpful people in this space. I think a lot of people really jealously guard their advantages or, their little hacks that they found. And, I just appreciate that you're one of the people that's pretty open about like what's working, what's not. And, we could use more of that.
I agree, man. I mean, like I said, it's just, I have benefited. My lens is I have benefited from those people. And my lens really came from Nick Abraham, actually. Like he's where I will like accredit in this space. Like, and I don't think he said it exactly this way, but like my lens is basically like, a lot of people who are really good at what they do, but they're not known for being really good.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who's known for being excellent at something and doesn't, make a lot of money, like achieve their goals, so to speak. And so what I realized is like, it's more scarce to be known for being really good than it is to be really good. And so I was like, I'm going to put more energy into, and not just like being known for being good, but just like serving people in the way where the inevitability is that you will, garner that reputation or whatever. So
I think that's definitely the right way to look at it. I mean, if you think about, whatever secret idea people think that people are going to run with and steal, I mean, I think about it's sort of how people that give advice, right? They're always just worried about, are you even going to implement it? They're never really worried about whether you're going to steal their idea or something. And it's so true. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it by now, right? You've told people a million times some great strategy or some approach, and the execution for them to get from there to where you are, it's just maybe it's one or two people and you won't even notice the competition, basically.
100%.
Yeah. So, all right, man, this was great. I'm gonna wrap up on the recording here.